And okay, here we go. All right, well, thanks everyone for your attendance today. I definitely appreciate it. I recognize that there's a number of other competing sessions, and so the fact that you chose to spend the next 25 or so minutes with me really means a lot. I promise to make this as enlightening as possible, and if I fail to do that, I have a couple jokes in my hip pocket that I can sprinkle out and make it entertaining. So the session today that I wanted to talk about was Supercharge Pardot Insights with Datorama. I am, and my team by extension, we are Datorama experts. We're certainly not Pardot experts, but we work with Pardot data quite a bit. And so I think the goals for the session are just to give you an overview of what the Datorama platform is capable of, and how you might be able to even build upon, using Pardot in tandem with Datorama, I may be able to build upon and enhance some of the default measurement data points that are coming out of some of the Pardot campaigns that you and your teams oversee. So what I wanted to kind of unpack again over the course of 25 minutes, and I probably have too much content to be honest, but I'll do my best to get through it efficiently. I want to first establish the case for marketing intelligence and just sort of set the stage for why the time is right for a platform like Datorama, and really why it's powerful amongst the technologies and the marketing cloud ecosystem. I'll give you a little bit of a background about my firm, Solistic. I promise I won't pat myself on the back too much, but just to let you know kind of who we are and kind of how we think about technology and technology's application in a marketing setting. And then we're going to dive in specifically into Datorama. I'll give you an overview, a much deeper and hopefully clear non-marketing jargon review of what Datorama is as a platform. We'll go over it at a high level, and then I have some samples specifically using Pardot data. Again, it's all really intended to give you a sense for what this powerful technology is capable of. So I know that I don't have the benefit, unfortunately, I just have a single screen monitor. I don't have the benefit of seeing any questions that are coming in real time, but I promise if there are any, I'll address them towards the end of the Q&A session. So let us start first with the case for marketing intelligence. And actually, this was a report that our friends at Datorama published earlier this year, which is interesting. We were having a sidebar conversation, my colleagues and I, about how we imagine this report is going to be materially different this next year, because this was published just before the pandemic hit and kind of turned the world upside down. But the marketing intelligence report that was published earlier this year really dug in and highlighted three key conclusions. Marketers, modern digital, predominantly digital marketers, face three fundamental issues. One is a lack of a unified view of their marketing investment. And anyone, it's become kind of a cliche at this point, but everyone has seen the Lumascape at some point, or another. Just this, big, expansive document, visual of all the MarTech and AdTech technologies that have exploded in recent years, and now there are multiple, vertical specific Lumascapes, because that universe continues to accelerate. So channels and technologies to manage those channels for communication engagement, of course, are exploding and continue to do so. And that's a challenge. There's no one individual within a marketing organization that can possibly be tasked with overseeing everything. Number two, lack of real-time performance insights to optimize ROI and results. I'll butcher the actual stats of it, but Datorama has done a good job of identifying this in some of the research that they've performed. They indicate that a majority of time for a lot of organizations is spent on data, corralling data, manipulating data, preparing it for presentation and dissemination within other groups, that it takes so long that the time to act and then actually improve results has been diminished. So that's, again, another kind of core challenge that marketers have faced. And then ultimately, this notion of alignment and data governance. Who needs access to what information when? And the more we become globalized as a civilization, and piggybacking on the comment before about that explosion in channels and kind of Lumascape's visual representation of that explosion, it makes it really difficult to know, again, to not only wrap your arms around that information, but then distribute it to the right folks at the right time. And for enterprise organizations, they're going to be dealing with agency partners, including Pardot SIs, would be certainly included in that mix, but media agencies, marketing agencies, et cetera. So there's really no one destination for marketing data. So it creates some sizable challenges. So building on that number one point, the lack of a unified view. This is kind of the way that we think and articulate kind of why technologies like Datorama exist, and more specifically why firms like Solistic exist. it's becoming unwieldy. And the anecdote that I love sharing, and this is because I'm a dorky father. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and a year ago, if you weren't a 12-year-old girl, who knew that TikTok was a thing? And now, it's had a meteoric rise, and it's, becoming, a regular staple of media and marketing plans as people are going forward. And so that just, I think, highlights, the inevitable change that's going to be a persistent aspect of the industry in which we all work as marketers ourselves. And so, it really kind of underscores, again, the need for that unified view, some one singular destination where you can be privy to all manner of marketing performance data, and then make fundamental business and marketing optimization decisions based on that one comprehensive data set. If that's sort of the North Star that we're all striving towards, anyway. So this is actually the slide I was referring to, the data point that I was referring to a few slides ago. So this is Datorama's value prop, and kind of how they take their message to market. And I'm going to assume, by the way, and I put a poll in the chat for those, I just want to understand who has been exposed to Datorama versus those who have not. I'm sure there's maybe, I'm anticipating there's probably some folks on both sides of that camp, but I'm going to assume that this is maybe, a session you attended out of curiosity, or it's your first time being exposed to Datorama. So fundamentally, the value proposition that Datorama offers is this: you can begin to flip this paradigm, so to speak, and spend a majority of your time on analysis and optimization once that foundational legwork has been performed, and you've created data standards for each disparate channel. If you work with an external media partner, there's been those conversations. We've been able to take inventory of what those data sets plural look like, and we understand how to normalize those in order to make effective business decisions. So it eliminates the need, once that fundamental work, that foundational work has been performed, it eliminates the need to spend all your time in data integration, cleansing and prepping, et cetera, in order to then make a decision. Oftentimes, it's comparatively a rushed decision, based on all that information. So let me, before I toggle and go to talk about my firm in particular, just to punctuate that point on Datorama, there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace, and even at times we kind of get confused. There are a lot of lookalikes. There are a lot of other firms that put forth their technology offering as a competitive one to Datorama, and the truth is there really is no genuine apples to apples comparison, because folks kind of sort of do it a little bit differently. And we often have we do a lot of work on Tableau as well, and that's the most tangible, I think, representation of a platform like Datorama, is the visualization, the dashboard at the end of the rainbow that's created and is made accessible. So the clearest way I can articulate what Datorama is and the benefits of it, it's three products in one. You have foundationally, you have a data warehouse, where after you've connected to multiple data sources, you've ingested that data into Datorama. It gets stored in a local data warehouse. Then there's really the workhorse of the platform is its ETL, which is an acronym for extract, transform, and load. And that's really the beauty of Datorama, and why we think that it's worthwhile as an investment and a technology. What they've done over time is they've identified, they've basically solved for all manner of marketing data. So they've built default data models to account for email data, to account for paid search data, organic search data, website analytics, social, programmatic display, et cetera. And that in and of itself is fantastic, but to take it a step further, they give power users the tools and the ability to blend that information together. It allows you to answer fundamental business questions that are not so channel centric. If and again, I know this is a Pardot conference, and so maybe you spend your lives in that platform singularly, and that's fine. A lot of other marketers would be toggling between a platform like Pardot and maybe Google Ads and Google Analytics, et cetera. And so you have to, in order to get that full comprehensive view of things, you have to take bits and pieces of information and stitch them together yourself. And so through the power of Datorama, you bring that information together, and the T in ETL, the transform aspect of it, is really the workhorse. It's where it allows you to unify that data prior to then visualizing it, which is the third application really that sits within Datorama. So it's other competitive offerings require you to basically source those three disparate technologies yourself, cobble them together, and maintain them going forward. Whereas here you have kind of a crass analogy, I guess, but here you have just the one throat to choke, so to speak. So then my firm, we founded the firm. We've been consulting in Datorama going on 5 years. We know it quite well. We were one of Datorama's original partners. And kind of the North Star rallying cry that we have is better marketing outcomes. So Datorama, for purposes of this conversation, we do broader Salesforce analytics. But for Datorama, we think of that as the canvas through which we hope to accomplish this objective. And so we work with both advertising agencies, direct brand marketers, and even we partner with other marketing, Salesforce Marketing Cloud SI organizations to offer Datorama support services in the instance of a multi-product, kind of an opportunity with a new customer. But it always ladders up again to this notion of better marketing outcomes. And then quickly, I mentioned we were Datorama's first certified partner, something that we're extremely proud of. We have a global presence in 3 geographic locations. I myself am in Columbus, Ohio. And as a result of our global footprint, we're fully certified Datorama partners in EMEA, and Asia Pacific. So enough, again, I promised limited back padding. The last thing I wanted to highlight here is what we call the decision sciences framework. It's everyone, all firms, all good firms have a strategic framework that they point to. Ours really is in lockstep. If you recall that the marketing intelligence report that we talked about at the onset, it really aims to address those 3 key fundamental issues facing marketers. And so our work is not done. We are not entirely satisfied unless we've put an organization on this continuum towards, again, better marketing outcomes, but it's not only making better sense of data, unifying it, but ultimately enabling and empowering their teams to take action based on that. So rather than continue to kind of yammer on in broad platitudes, I thought that I would pivot a little bit and actually show you the platform. We can, let's see, I'm still sharing my screen. Okay, excellent. So I wanted to first give you an overview of the platform, show you what it is. Again, my assumption here is that not everyone on this session is versed in Datorama or understands its kind of full power and potential. And so we'll talk about some elementary aspects, and by the end of it, we'll get into some of the more advanced stuff too, which is pretty cool. Let me start off with connect and mix. So this is where a majority of users would start. So fundamentally, in order for a platform like Datorama to function, you have to introduce marketing data to it. So here we have our full range of API connectors. And the good news is they've done a fantastic job through the years of expanding their API libraries. So you can see there's 116 marketing vendors right now that, in the instance of, I'll pick on our friends at, well, let's say we'll go to Pardot, just given the context here. So there's the Pardot connector. It really is as simple as, and I don't have an account authenticated here within my workspace, but it's you simply add your credentials, email, password, and user key. You click save, and you can ingest a default set of information. You can make further enhancements or adjustments to how the data is coming in. You might tell Datorama that you don't need a subset of information, or you can, again, you have the ability to enhance it and enrich it as well once you've ingested it. But again, there's the 116. Let me jump back there. The 116 marketing vendors, a lot of the usual suspects, but they've done a really nice job of pushing the envelope and really kind of bringing in some, I hesitate to call them fringe data sources, but ones that are not quite as commonly used. So it's just a really nice, rich library. Now, in the event that you do not, and there's our friend TikTok, speaking of which, very apropos. So, even if your full use case, I know, again, this is Pardot. Pardot is accounted for here, but even in that use case where you have some highly bespoke set of marketing data you need to bring into the system and include with your data sets, you have the power of what they call Total Connect. It's essentially it affords you the benefit of the full Datorama data architecture, all of the data models that they've built, and you can customize it to your very bespoke needs. You can even configure the system to interface with APIs for future updates and ingestion, or you can introduce the subsequent updates via email or SFTP, whatever makes the most sense. But all to say, there's, again, very powerful back-end infrastructure in place for you to augment what is available here to you out of the box. So this is kind of the extract portion of that ETL. This is how we get information into Datorama. The result looks something like this. And you can see all of the data sources listed here, and I just built this up for our demonstration purposes, which I'll get to in a moment. I want to touch on a couple of the things before we jump to the visuals. There, as I mentioned before, you can manipulate each of these data sets, and so let me just dig in on one. And let's see, I'm going to just show you what this looks like. So in a very generic sense, on the left-hand side is these are the values that are being passed, in this instance, Google Analytics. This is what's being passed via the API. On the right, this is where in this case, the system did a majority of this as a default mapping exercise. This is where the system has mapped these API values to data values that exist within the Datorama data model. But we can make changes to this. For example, let's just say, and again, this may be a bad nonsensical example here, but we can manipulate this. Let's just say that hypothetically we care about events, but maybe our event tally is we want to look at total events plus unique events, and I don't know what it's kind of a nonsensical use case, but just so you can see how you can edit things here real time, I can add plus CSV. I said unique events, and then validate my code. And again, a very simple example, but you can inject JavaScript here, and the default system language is what's called MVEL, which is kind of a fringe language, but it has some commonalities with JavaScript. But you can do some pretty advanced stuff here to manipulate stuff at the mapping, what's called the mapping screen here. And then once you brought information in, you can further manipulate it. And here's where I have done a little bit of pre-work, for purposes of the conversation today. Well, you have an opportunity. This is one of the key engines of Datorama, Harmonization Center. This is why you would invest in a really robust tool like Datorama. So what I've done here, there's all kinds of things we can do, but for today's purposes, what I've done is use data classification. Now I'm actually using, in the presentation I'm going to show you, this is an actual client's data set, but I've done my best to keep it anonymized. So I won't show you these email subject names because it would be a bit obvious, but I'll show you site source. Basically, it's glorified lookup files. So we're talking about email data. I should have caveated as well. I recognize that Pardot is more than email, but just to keep things as straightforward and simple as possible, I opted to focus just on the email use case. And so here you can see, based on these are source medium, Google Analytics source medium combinations that are in my client's actual data set. You see HS is indicative of HubSpot specific email. There's also some Marketo, some Pardot data here as well. But these are the values that are coming through, and you can see that this is source, and then this is medium. And what we're saying is that anytime this appears as the source medium value, we just clean that up for presentation purposes as email 2, email 4, pretty generic stuff. But I think it'll become a bit more crystal in a moment. And so this is just one of many ways in which you can, quote unquote, blend data together, harmonize data. I'll show you one other one, and then I'll show the actual visuals, and I hope some of these concepts will become a bit more crystal. Here, Data Fusion is a really powerful tool. What we do with Data Fusion, conceptually what it is my earlier point about how Datorama knows what each data set type looks like. It understands email data, it understands analytics data, it understands search data, et cetera, et cetera. Data Fusion allows you to essentially join dimensional values that exist, that are named differently and that exist in different data buckets. So let me see if I have a good example here. For purposes of clean email send names, I'm not sure why it's not letting me highlight. Okay, I'll try that one out. So here I'm merging, again, this is some internal baseball shorthand here, but what I've essentially married are two dimensional fields, one that exists in the email data set and one that exists in the site analytics data set. And I've identified those here. Here's the analytics one, and there's the email one. So what I've instructed Datorama to do is to treat these as equivalent. And I'll show you exactly how that plays out when it comes time for analysis and presentation. So let me jump over there quickly. I have what I hope you'll agree is a pretty interesting use case. I built out some ParDreamin visuals. I won't point to the visualization capability, but obviously you're seeing what's represented here. So just know that the visualization library is very robust, and you can do a lot of stuff. You can even create custom visuals, which we've done quite a bit of custom work. But this is all done with out-of-the-box data visuals that are within the Datorama environment. Now here, we're looking just at Pardot email data. So you see the usual suspects: email, message sends, deliveries, opens, open rate, clicks, and CTR. I mentioned before how we kind of cleaned up those names within Harmonization Center, was my example before. So we have the email campaign of newsletter and lead nurture, and then there was, again, all the measures that support those. Then down here, we have kind of a high level, generic engagement funnel, sends, deliveries, opens, and I think clicks at the bottom. Yeah, so nothing super sexy, but again, the usual high level measurements that you would expect to find within an ESP, when you log in and you look at it. Pretty interesting. You can, of course, you have, the benefit of Datorama in this instance is you can make it a bit sexier, a bit more intuitive to the user. And we can do some fancy things like filtering. So I can say, I only want to see newsletter performance, and the visuals will update accordingly. Or, within newsletter, I only want to see newsletter 1. And it gets, you can stack those kinds of filters on top of one another for that a bit more precise analysis. So, okay, it's interesting, but again, it's kind of cursory level information. So that next click in, that was email only. What happens if we merge Pardot data with site analytics data? Now this would work with Adobe Analytics, it would work with Heap or Mixpanel or any other technology you're using. In this case, we just kept it simple, and this is married with Google Analytics data. So what we've done, if you recall the source medium values that I showed you a moment ago within Harmonization Center, I've renamed those, and then I've fused them through data fusion together with email data, and the result is actually pretty elegant. So here we see on a single line email campaign performance, and I have, again, my usual suspect KPIs here that were just uniquely specific to email, but I've layered in visit sessions. So this is not visit sessions coming from Google Analytics in aggregate. This is unique to email. So, again, these sends, delivers, opens, clicks, visit sessions. In this period, we're looking at November 1 through 30. The 1528 clicks yielded 1,800 visits. So we had some repeat visits in that in that time frame as well. You can see the bounce rate, the page views, ATOS is average time on site, number of conversions generated, and our ultimate conversion rate. Now, conversion rate here, it's a little bit semantics, but conversion rate here is conversions divided by visit sessions, not clicks or opens. But that can all be manipulated depending on your business requirements. So, but the really cool thing here is we've taken the cursory email data and we've flattened it. You can see it all on a single line item, this website analytics data. So it allows you to much more comprehensively and deeply understand, okay, we distributed an email, maybe it was a regular subscriber newsletter, maybe it was part of our lead nurture initiatives. Here's the downstream impact that it had once the user clicked through to our company.com environment. And again, kind of similar, just sort of expanded upon this. You can do similar kind of filters, and I added website visits and stuff and goal completions to this engagement funnel. So again, pretty cool stuff. We've gotten a little bit more complex, a little bit more advanced. We can take that a step further, and actually, within the context of a 25-minute presentation, it's hard to unpack that full use case when you can close the loop with Sales Cloud data. All that is possible, but I took it just one more step for today's discussion. And here I've introduced paid media data, and in particular, we're looking at programmatic media. This is coming from the trade desk. So the idea here is, in so far, what we've been focused on, of course, the widgets are going to be slow to load. It's always when we're presenting. The idea here, we've only chosen one primary dimension to blend across each of these data sources. In this case, it's campaign name. But I hope that you can understand how it could be audience cohort. It could be, you could do some messaging, call to action. Really, the potential here is pretty infinite. The idea overall, and I'll speak to here this dashboard, but what I want you to kind of get an understanding of is that this isn't going to recreate, and nor should it, your Pardot reporting UI where you can look at individual user level interactions. It's not intended to do that. It's intended to surface up insights that you wouldn't be privy to otherwise because you're so focused on those individual user level interactions. Here we have the ability through Harmonization Center to define groupings of data that are meaningful to us. It could be channel, it could be campaign, it could be, again, objective, geography, device type, whatever makes sense in your business. And we can bring that email data, enhance it, enrich it with other channel-based data in order for a more comprehensive and richer view into that, that slice of your marketing information, if that makes sense. So here we've done that very thing. And so again, I'm asking you to kind of, because I've sort of fudged this data for presentation purposes, so I'm asking you to take a conceptual leap of faith here with me. But in this instance, we've unified at the campaign name, if you recall. So we're building on the previous two dashboards. We've also added here channel just because it was cool. I wanted to show you how you could toggle back and forth between channel level performance and all the widgets would update, or alternatively, we can turn that off and go strictly programmatic. You can see ad spend relative to what the customer wanted to spend in the period, et cetera, or you can bring them all together. So these are unified measurements. But down here, again, we have campaign-specific performance. And with respect to lead nurture, well, you can see how impressions shot up. So in this instance, what's happening in the trade desk is you have programmatic display media that's providing a nice retargeting surround sound for users that are on that lead nurture queue. So they interact with our message, through their email client. They've maybe engaged in our website. They've been placed into a retargeting queue that's complementary to the core lead nurture efforts that in this instance, again, it provides that nice surround sound for us. And so, again, we've been able to collapse all that down. I don't want to do that. I want to turn these off. It'll get a little noisy here in a second, yeah. But you can see down here, it collapsed it down to a single line item. We see the lead nurture, impressions, clicks, CTR, all these new measurements are introduced here. Even video views, there was some video ads in this particular ad buy, cost per video view, and then you see the same visits, bounce rate, page views, time on site, et cetera. So again, it enriches that data and it brings it back to the point of origin to allow for that more precise analysis. Now you might have noticed that we've dropped in this case some of the email specific KPIs, opens, deliveries, et cetera, but they are represented here. We just defined in this instance, because there's a lot. This is a pretty busy page here. We've defined a common nomenclature or taxonomy. So when you click on email, for example, these are email clicks. So as opposed to media placement clicks, of course. So just and impressions, by the way, I think we summed together. Impressions are representative here of in this context of email opens. So again, it's important to define that common language. But at any rate, I hope that you can kind of see the progression, the build. What we could have done from here, again, is we could have layered in social data, which is always really interesting, as well as that closed loop analytics with Sales Cloud. Anything we want to attribute actual net new customers, resultant revenue, if we want to bring that back and attribute it to a lead nurture email program or a programmatic ad buy, or whatever the case may be, we certainly can do that. And all through that, also, I was trying to, I was hopeful that you also caught that, the visualization capabilities are pretty slick as well. We can play with this and create a perfect visual for analysis, for client reporting, for to be included in a quarterly business review presentation, whatever the context may be. So with that, I know I ran a little bit long, but I'm hopeful that was somewhat interesting and educational. And so let me stop the screen share here. And I guess for starters, are there any questions? So I don't see any questions in the Q&A. Let me make sure. Actually, that's not true. Hang on. All right. So Michelle asked, is it possible to report on or view Salesforce data fields along with Pardot data fields? Excellent question. The answer is absolutely yes. So Datorama. I won't share my screen again. I'll just speak to it. So Datorama has, not surprisingly, some powerful hooks, automated API integrations into the world of Salesforce, Sales Cloud included. And so there's a couple of methods for data ingestion. What my team and I always prefer to do is use the SOQL method. And that way you can, we'll work in in the workbench to test the queries, because obviously everyone's Salesforce environment is a little bit different. So we'll test some queries just to make sure that we have access to full marketing attribution endpoints. And once we figure out that perfect query or sets of queries, then we can introduce it into Datorama. And so that's, in particular, I know that this is predominantly a B2B focused audience. We have some B2B customers where we can attribute the ad impression or even like an email open, and all the way down, we can follow them down to the funnel to an opportunity closed with the opportunity amount, and pull that all the way back to that originating first touch, and provide that kind of closed loop analysis. So, the TLDR version of that question is yes, absolutely, it's possible. And I'm happy to hang tight and answer any other additional questions that folks might have. Michelle, you were the only one that asked one in the Q&A chat. If there are none, we are actually sponsors of ParDreamin, so feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to book a session to elaborate on anything that we've shown. Again, I've really only scratched the surface with what's possible here, but again, in my experience, Pardot users have not really entirely been exposed to Datorama, and frankly, vice versa. We think of ESPs, to be honest, more often than not, we're dealing with Email Studio. So at any rate, we could probably learn a lot from one another, but I'm available to anyone if you want to continue the conversation. So with that, I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thanks again for everyone who attended, and enjoy the rest of the show.